Hello, I am Jackson Funkhauser, and this is my presentation on how Alzheimer's communities affect their community. The National Institute of Aging states that Alzheimer's disease is a brain disorder that slowly destroys memory and thinking skills, and eventually the ability to carry out the simplest tasks. In most people with Alzheimer's, symptoms first appear later in life. Estimates vary, but experts suggest that more than 6 million Americans, most of which are 65 or older, may have Alzheimer's. We often think of nostalgia as something harmless, a fond remembrance of the past. However, in communities with high Alzheimer's rates, nostalgia isn't just a personal feeling. It becomes a dominant force, shaping attitudes, politics, and culture. When memory itself is compromised, people tend to cling to what they remember best, the past, which leads us to my thesis. My thesis is, how does nostalgia contribute to resistance to social change in communities with high Alzheimer's disease prevalence rates? This is important because aging populations are increasing, and many communities are experiencing demographic shifts that affect their social and political landscapes. Understanding the role Alzheimer's plays in social resistance can help policymakers, caregivers, address the situation more effectively. To support my thesis, I use sources from the stimulus, like the Alzheimer's Association 2024 Facts and Figures report. This provides critical insight into memory loss and its impact on communities. Some communities appeal specifically to older generations, like Miami-Dade County, Florida, with their many retirement homes, or Baltimore City, Maryland, with their age-friendly events and acts. These communities may experience a greater resistance to social change than communities with younger populations due to a higher proportion of individuals with Alzheimer's and dementia. Johan Norberg is a Swedish author and historian selected for the stimulus. Norberg's paper is especially interesting because it discusses the concept of false nostalgia. Norberg describes false nostalgia as an unrealistic view of the past. A key finding from this research in his paper would suggest that, when faced with a rapidly changing world, historical populations would use false nostalgia. Quote, people going through rough times can be helped by remembering better days in the past. For dementia sufferers, nostalgia can help establish some sense of personal continuity. While nostalgia can be helpful for some patients with Alzheimer's, false nostalgia caused by the disease can create community that is resistant to change. My argument is that Alzheimer's communities affect their community in ways because of the voluntary nostalgia that is described by Norberg's paper and the involuntary nostalgia caused by the disease. Because people already resist change. The idea is reinforced by Johan Norberg's research on nostalgia, who suggests that people in general resist rapid social transitions. When this is combined with Alzheimer's-induced memory loss, it creates a strong psychological barrier against change. For example, in the documentary, It Is Not Over Yet, a nursing home treats patients with dementia, offers patients a new and beneficial dementia treatment. Unfortunately, the documentary shows that the patients were initially extremely resistant to change, even though the treatment eventually had beneficial results. The documentary sheds light on how it took substantially longer than expected for the change-resistant patients to accept the new and beneficial treatment. Also because of short-term memory loss. Since Alzheimer's patients struggle to retain recent memories, they naturally gravitate towards familiar patterns and resist adopting new social norms. One key finding from the National Institute of Aging is that people with Alzheimer's often forget recent events first, which leads to an intensified reliance on older memories. This involuntary nostalgia, combined with the general societal tendency toward idolizing the past, strengthens resistance to change. People with Alzheimer's often forget recent events first. Short-term memory loss cognitive barrier reinforces routine, familiar environments, and past experience over new or progressive ones. The Alzheimer's Society states that memory loss leads to emotional and behavioral changes, further entrenching resistance to change. Unfortunately, false nostalgia can harm communities with a high percentage of Alzheimer's patients when they resist change that could have a positive impact on their lives and the lives of those around them. There are multiple perspectives on this issue, however. Some argue that Alzheimer's patients have minimal impact on the communities due to social withdrawal, while others highlight the indirect influence they have through caregivers, voting, and community structures. For example, research from the National Library of Medicine suggests that Alzheimer's patients may experience emotional withdrawal, which could limit their direct influence. However, studies on dementia care facilities show that even small behavioral tendencies can reinforce broader community attitudes towards civility and tradition. However, some may argue that Alzheimer's patients have little influence on their communities due to them becoming socially withdrawn, as I said before. Social withdrawal is a symptom of Alzheimer's, but Alzheimer's patients may have indirect influence on those around them through their caregivers helping them out, their voting tendencies, and local policies, which plays a role in shaping societal norms. Additionally, Alzheimer's affects entire families, as seen in the short film The Wait, where a father's dementia prescription affects his daughter's entire life in seemingly negative ways. To conclude, communities with high Alzheimer's prevalence tend to resist social change because of the combined effects of the voluntary nostalgia and the involuntary memory loss associated with the disease. This has significant implications for policymakers, urban planners, and social workers. If we want to create inclusive communities that adapt to social progress, we must recognize the role memory plays in shaping attitudes toward change. Further research could explore how dementia-friendly initiatives might ease this resistance and foster better community integration. And this is my work session.
Thank you. So Jackson, how did your research question evolve as you moved through the process?
So originally my research question was just, how do dementia patients are they more resistant to change? But I decided that I thought it was too, not enough work for me to do. And I decided to also add on a facet that says, how do they affect their communities in this way?
And then, how is your conclusion in conversation with the body of research that you looked at?
My conclusion really just expands on the body of research in which I examined. Like the Alzheimer's 2024 Facts and Figures, it shows that these places should be given more effort and time put into the patients there, and that can help them adapt more to social change.
Thank you. Good job.